Is Iraq better off today than it was prior the 2003 invasion? After all the bloodshed and the ISIS threat, is Iraq a safer or more prosperous nation in 2023? I work with some Iraqi people. I have asked them the same on different occasions. Of course, if Saddam Hussein's regime favored your family or not, the answer would be different. But what I find fascinating is that all these Iraqis that live, work and flourish in a democratic country like Canada, all agree that Iraq is not ready for Western democracy. Saddam ruled by fear, but that worked, and it's what the people were accustomed to. In a sense, they do wish things would go back to what they were for the sake of their families that still live there. I live in an area with lots of Iraqi Christians, Chaldeans as they are called. I've asked them this question before, and all of them, to my surprise, said that under Saddam's rule, things were better. Yes, they were discriminated due to their minority religion, and as others have said, did not have the same rights as the average Iraqi. But as long as you acted as a normal citizen and didn't cause trouble, you were fine. Things were safer, predictable, and the systems they had in place worked. Nowadays, not exactly the same can be said. Probably better if you are a Kurd or Shia. At best vaguely related, but something I wonder about. X200B. Is Iraq better than Syria now? I can't help but feel that even if the US didn't invade, demographic, technological, and economic forces would have had the Arab Spring happen in Iraq just like elsewhere. And no way Saddam and family would have been nicer than al-Assad. The invasion was not meant to make Iraq a better place for Iraqis. Ask the million PPL who died. Ask their families if they'd trade a corrupt but democratic gov for their loved one back. As far worse off. The US couldn't create a strong and supported enough government to keep the different ethnic groups from fighting. It then pulled out, leaving a power vacuum which directly led to the rise of ISIS. As someone who has family in Iraq, the answer is no, not at all. Say what you want about Saddam, but the people of Iraq needed someone like him. He kept all the infighting at bay. Edit typos. The goal of the 2003 invasion wasn't to make everything great for the Iraqis. The goal was to make the world safe from Iraqi aggression. On that front, mission accomplished. No, the US invasion of Iraq was as easily as the greatest crime of the 21st century, and everyone who planned and promoted it belongs in prison. It destabilized an entire region, ignited sectarian violence, leveled cities, led to ISIS, made the Syrian civil war worse, resulted in slave markets and mass rape, genocide, etc., etc. A handful of people might be better off now, but overall it was a catastrophe for the vast majority of Iraqis and Syrians. No, especially not for the several hundreds of thousands who died or were displaced. I saw a documentary on this. Saddam was a fierce ruler that kept the terrorist at bay with his dictatorship, so when he was ousted, it became a vacuum for extremism. You want a really sad question? Try this one. Is Iraq today better off than it was prior to the United States lifting sanctions and normalizing relations in 2003? Obviously hypothetical, but still sad to consider. No. There are many East Asian countries which became prosperous during dictatorship. China is currently undergoing its golden age under dictatorship as well. Then there are countries like Japan which are democracies, but only one party has ever formed governments for 70 years. When the 2003 war was starting, I was a little skeptical of the WMD claims. But I was generally in favor of the invasion because I thought that Iraqis were decent people who were under the thumb of a brutal dictator and they wanted democracy. I basically bought into the neocon propaganda. I couldn't have been more wrong. Saddam was like a tight lid on a pressure cooker of sectarian and ethnic division. I'm sad to say it, but Islam is incompatible with democracy. If it weren't for the need to defend Israel and potentially blockade China, I would say the US should completely disengage from the region. Now that we are energy independent. Absolutely not. Ask the 2 million Assyrian Christians who used to be the majority in major parts of the northern parts. In Nineveh and Dohuk. Whole country bombed back to the 50s. Millions dead, all based on lies. Still have to deal with ISIS or similar type of groups. Refugees. Child trafficking. Yeah, they are definitely better off. Iraq should not be a nation. The boundaries make no sense. They create a country with no control over its water supply, a single easily blockadable port, and zero natural defensible borders. That's not even getting into the ethnic and religious divides. There's a reason why the region now called Iraq was dominated by foreign empires for so much of its history. It simply doesn't have the geography to survive in an area as frequently fought over as the Near East. Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan. All of these countries were better off before the US. It's clear improving these countries were not why the US got involved. Same pattern for so many Cold War-era conflicts. Short answer: no. If you need details, ask, but it is pretty clear. Well, there were protests in Baghdad this week, so free speech has definitely been better off. That's the wrong question. Is the world better? Iraq wasn't even about Iraq. Depends on who you ask. Shia, Kurds, or Christians? Their life has probably gotten better as they don't have to worry about being persecuted based on their religious ethnic affiliation. Sunni Arabs? Their life has probably gotten very unpredictable and turbulent compared to before. I guess my related question is, has any country ever come out of a regime changed forced by a foreign military via invasion and occupation better than before? Legitimately curious, because it really fundamentally seems destined to cause more problems if the people of a country are not in the driver's seat, even without being compounded by the horrors of war. Democracy does not work in these countries. At least not yet. Absolutists are needed to push through very difficult reforms to get the countries moving. Unless someone can provide few counter-examples. The lack of this is why Iraq remains a failure. But it is still better than it was under Saddam. It just won't thrive for a long time as it is either. Although at a low level, it is definitely incrementally better. FYI, millions have not died BCS Saddam was toppled. Get your facts straight and don't spread anti-Western propaganda. Coming from you-know-who. Is my house better off before it got bombed? Will that affect my mortgage? Will government replace my street? Will my dead family members recover? Way better. Not only has their dictatorship and hardcore rule of Saddam been replaced with democratic values, allowing institutions and free markets to operate in Iraq has been very successful. Their GDP per capita has nearly increased tenfold as compared to 2000. Like, what will happen to Ukraine in the future? At least the US saved Iraq from being ruled by that lunatic Caligula kind of son of Saddam. Can't answer. However, I'll randomly say the book Assassin's Gate was a fascinating look at this topic. Hell no, lol. No. There's a really good frontline that covers a number of Iraqis describing their experiences. The common theme seemed to be that things were generally better under Saddam, or at least that was my take of it. Someone on the show mentioned something along the lines of, had the USA restored the water and electricity during the early occupation, the outcome could have been very different. I feel that sums it all up.